we're kind of jumping on and doing this live stream is because this has been a while in the making, actually. You had an idea to do this sort of thing a while ago. I was like, mate, like me talking about politics or anything that's not just like arse eating. Nah, I'm not really confident about that, mate. But we finally, you know what I mean? Something finally happened where I was like, do you know what? I need my boy Vinny Bevs to jump on and show me what's real. Because I need to know your perspective on this shit. But just before that, I'll introduce you to some of the watchers. Vincent Bevins, can you give a little background to people that might not know who you are?
First, you're quite political. I mean, that was it. Like you.
But the thing is, I have feelings about stuff, but I don't do the reading. Know what I mean?
I think you do. Anyways, yeah. So, my name is Vincent Bevins. I'm a journalist from the United States, and then I've mostly worked as a correspondent in South America and Southeast Asia for like mainstream American and British papers.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to but the reason I kind of got you on here is basically because you just wrote a book. You just dropped some heat on the streets. You know what I mean? Dropped a mixtape. Can you? Because I haven't read the book. I'm not a book. I'm stupid, innit? I don't read books.
It's not that. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Enough people have. That's
fine. No, because I thought it would be a fun game to look at the negative reviews on Amazon and let you rebut them. But even your negative Amazon reviews, the guy's like, I'm still gonna read his next book though. Like even the haters love your shit. So
people have been. I thought people were gonna be a lot meaner because it's quite. Yeah, people have been nice about it.
I have to say, like all the reviews for it have been like sucking your bum off clean. But yeah, can you explain what the book's about and what the Jakarta Method's about and stuff? Really?
Yeah, it's called the Jakarta Method. It is about violence, mass murder carried out against the left, socialists, communists, feminists, anyone perceived to be too left-wing in the 20th century. And these were programs backed by the United States or organized by the United States and its allies, Britain often involved. And the main episode of mass murder, the one that gives the name to the book and to like sort of this method that arose in other countries, was Indonesia in 1965, when the U.S.-backed military killed approximately 1 million unarmed civilians for the crime of being left-wing or being accused of being left-wing.
Fucking hell.
Yeah,
that's a bit fucking heavy. I only vaguely know about it because of that documentary that came out a few years ago. Was it The Act of Killing?
Yeah, that documentary was important for Indonesia a bit because like it's still technically illegal to say what really happened.
Right.
And so for a younger generation, that was one way because it came from outside to like find out about it and then to look into it. So a lot of the young activists or like scholars that are really into this issue, even in Indonesia, like saw that film and got excited.
They were like, they were like, fucking hell, lads. We didn't even know about this shit.
Well, they often they knew that like a grandfather or a great grandfather like had disappeared somehow, but they didn't know what really had happened. Yeah.
Fucking hell, mate. Fucking hell. Basically, I thought you would be the best person to discuss a little bit of drama that we saw on the old timeline. Wait, hold up. Let me. Oh, wrong one. Here we go.
Yes.
Have you read this thread at all?
So I caught wind of it right before she deleted it, but like every Indonesian that I follow or like know was going wild on it, and like now it's on like level 5 of like the discourse, like the response to the response to the response. But yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I did. I think it's still going really in Indonesia Twitter. Like this has been a real moment of like
a real moment for Indonesian Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter has in 4 days it probably won't matter anymore. But right now it's really
Okay.
Yeah, it's blowing. It's everyone's weighing in somehow.
Yeah. I mean, what is your 2 cents on it?
Well, like unlike a lot of moments on Twitter, I think it's actually
Yeah.
sort of interesting
Yeah,
because
exactly. I read it and I was like instantly fascinated by it.
yeah, and I think the reason that it's interesting is that it like to get at what's really happening, you need to untangle a lot of like different sort of cultural and ideological and political strands that like are all like wrapped together in the moment right now.
Yeah.
And it like gets to something which is, I mean, for me, if you had to like ask what it's really about,
Yeah.
it's about the difference in wealth between rich countries and poor countries.
Yeah.
And the glaring like the shocking lack of knowledge about that inequality, that global inequality in the first world. Like
But do you think that's like a first world thing or an American thing?
America's what. So should we like did people know? Do you want to explain what she was saying, what the thread's about?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just bring it up again. So the whole thing was like moving out of America in my 20s has been a game changer. I've been living in Bali, Indonesia, with my girlfriend for a year. A thread. So I saved this. So she created like a thread thing. And I managed to save it before she deleted it, so it's a bit booky, but we will go through it. I was broke, struggling to find work the entire year of 2019. Fucking hell, don't I know it? I wanted to take a stab at entrepreneurship. I wanted to get out of survival mode and tap into how I could thrive. I think there's a lot of interesting strands of like how was it like wellness culture is like fucking evil and basically neo-colonialism and shit.
Right.
After getting rejected for jobs and living off savings and trying to make my business pop, my girlfriend and I decided to book one-way flights to Bali, Indonesia. They're quite leng, to be fair. She's a buff thing. The island has been amazing because of our elevated lifestyle at a much lower cost of living. I was paying 1,300 for my LA studio. Now I have a tree house for $400. December 2019 on the left, January 2021 on the right. So I assume that she's that looks all right. Being a digital nomad is everything. There's something about digital nomads which just screams fucking nonce to me.
Yeah, I mean, so there's so much about this that I can latch onto.
Yeah, please do.
So like, let me get at the very first thing, like the inequality between the United States specifically, because these girls, I mean, they were living in LA. They seem to be Americans, right? They're like, American, like, so the Washington Post did a story a few years back that I actually pulled up for this.
Ooh.
And so there was some research that did a survey on U.S. knowledge, basically, of their own sort of American privilege, like financial privilege, right?
Yeah.
And what the researchers said is that the vast majority of the people in the U.S. live in the top 10% of the world's richest people, right? So just to give you a sense, like GDP per capita, which is not like a perfect measurement of how rich a country is, but like it's a decent number. I'm looking at the numbers now. GDP per capita in the United States is 63,000 annually.
Right.
In Indonesia, it's 4,000, right? So we're talking about like 15 times, right? No. And when these researchers asked U.S. citizens to guess what the global average salary is, they guessed $20,000 a year. And the answer is $2,000 a year. So again, they guessed 10 times
more. Fucking hell.
Too high.
Yeah.
Like, so that is a thing that exists from my point of view. For the vast majority of Americans, whether or not you go to live in like a global South country or not, you are benefiting. You were born into a incredibly unequal world, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not that manifests itself in like cheap products from Amazon or, cheap labor that comes to your first world country to provide basic services, or you actually like experience it physically, viscerally when you get to a place like Bali and everything's cheap and people are all nice to you and life is just easy. The vast majorities of Americans are born into that kind of like situation, right? And the really interesting thing for this one, and this is the level of discourse that Indonesia is on now,
Right.
is that unless you're part of the population in America, which is like actually starving, we do have that in the United States. We have child poverty. We have really bad poverty.
Yeah.
It applies still to almost everyone. And I think a thing that really was like a real flashpoint that kind of like crossed people's wires here is that this is a black, I think, lesbian.
Yeah. So it's like black queer woman.
Yeah.
So that's like, yeah. And I and I get what you mean. It's like, it's got to the point where it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I come back to this American thing yet again, where it's like, I feel like Americans do this thing where they transpose their racial hierarchies into other countries, especially Asia. I see that quite a lot, where there's like a lot of just random 18-year-old girls on Twitter who will have like who'll say like outlandish blanket statements about racial relations in Asia without knowing fuck all, really, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I do see that. I try not to get involved because I'm totally, again, like when I lived in Indonesia, and I wrote my book in Bali, right? I want to make like when I lived, and I wrote in Bali because like we'll get to this later, but because there's a lot of killing happened there. There's graves underneath the tourist hotels. There is like really unresolved violence on the island. But I want to make clear, like when I lived there, I was absolutely also benefiting from the same dynamic. There's not really a right way to do it. There's nothing you could do as a U.S. citizen to take away the privilege that having that passport bestows on you, right?
Right. Yeah.
But what really set off the Indonesians that I follow is that she seemed to frame the whole thing as like, the reason I came to this country is because it's cheaper. So like I can earn in dollars, but pay Indonesian, right?
Right.
And I'm not. And then she also said at some point in the thread, replying to somebody, and I don't pay taxes.
Yeah. I think that was a lot of people's gripes about it.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And so like a lot of the digital nomad stuff, and like I said, I lived in Bali for a few months just writing the book because I was finishing the research there. So many of the digital nomads you meet like have jobs that are nonsense. It's like purely taking advantage of this like disconnect between rich and poor countries.
Yeah.
And just like sucking money out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of them do drop shipping, where
I've heard of it.
And then sell it on
eBay. Yeah. Dropshipping is like the most useless bollocks ever. It's literally like you're basically setting up a storefront in Facebook,
right?
Just to sell shit from AliExpress.
Yeah, that you don't buy. You just buy it and then put their address in, right? And so you're just sucking money out. A lot of them do like, and then it seemed that they had a book that they were selling about how you could live the life that they lived, right? Like, so like a grift where they were like, look, we're exploiting this inequality in the global system.
Yeah. You
can too. Give me $30 and I'll show you how, right?
Yeah. I feel like in my worst of like being broke, there was a while where I was like following like all these like motivational get money guys on Twitter and Instagram, and you quickly realize they're not making any money. What they do is they're selling ebooks on how to make money, and I think in the ebook is just like sell an ebook. That's how you make money.
When I was in like in Bali, I would like only write and like do exercise, right? And this one guy came up to me at the gym, and he was like, "Oh man, like, can I spot you or whatever?" And then he wanted to be friends, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I sell ebooks about how to live the digital nomad lifestyle. That's like my," and he was like so proud of his business or whatever. Yeah. And the thing that like, again, makes this like a cross, like, and I talk about this at the end of the book, like, because I'll get to what happened in Bali specifically when we go back to like the history, but the reality of 2021 is that if you're from Western Europe or the United States, it's incredibly likely that if you show up in a normal country, not even a poor country, a normal country, you can buy the very cheap labor of 3, 4, 5, 6 people to take care of you. And they'll probably smile at you and thank you and be nice to you because they're not stupid. They know that, if they're rude about it, you'll hire someone else. Yeah. And it seemed to be, maybe these people in their real lives are or are not ignorant of this dynamic, but certainly in the thread, they seemed to be ignorant of what they were taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And that was what really set off a lot of Indonesians. Now we're at the level of discourse I said, like level 5, where people were like, well, the backlash was good, but did we only do the backlash so vehemently because they were Black queer women? If they had been white men, would we have been less vehement in the backlash? And my friends are saying, yeah, probably. We probably would have been less vehement, but that would have been wrong. not that it's bad that we criticize this thread. It would have been wrong to criticize it less if it was a white man. Because there is, of course, like,
of course.
But like, and I don't know anything about the lived experience of these people like in the US, but like I imagine like, you know, life could have been hard in many ways, but still when you go to a country like Indonesia, it's a different like the gap in what you can buy and what locals can buy is really tough to imagine. And like, it was like, I mean, it made me like, it was like difficult and radicalizing for me. I mean, psychologically, like I wanted to get out of Southeast Asia kind of, because there's like, I kind of figured there's like no right way to be a white man in Southeast Asia. I figure like
I think it's, the problem is you just have to hang out with other fucking expats, and I feel like all the other expats are massive nonsense who are just there to fuck 6-year-olds. You know what I mean? Like, so I just don't trust single white men by themselves in Asia.
No, every single white man in Asia should be like, they should be subjected to like rigorous investigation. And after 3 or 4 months, if it turns out everyone says they're okay, then like, okay, maybe you get a chance.
Okay,
yeah, but I did not like, because I lived in Sao Paulo previously to Indonesia, and in Sao Paulo, it's kind of like moving to New York or whatever. Like, it's the same kind of society as the United States, right?
Would you mean?
Like, you can just kind of join, if you know Brazilian Portuguese, you can just kind of join a social group. In Southeast Asia, like you said, there's these groups of expats, and they go to like these stupid like sky bars or whatever with their Tinder dates, and like guys right away that you meet. I mean, I like moved away from this scene very, very quickly after moving there. But you meet guys and like, oh yeah, here, like you won't believe it, like Tinder, like everybody fucking like, you know, like, and so the type of guy that ends up in Jakarta or whatever tends to be the guy that goes there and then realizes that this Western privilege is like allows him this incredible lifestyle.
Right.
He gets kind of addicted to it. So I intentionally like just did not go to any of those things. And that kind of even got me in trouble in the world of journalists, because they were like, oh, well, he never fucking comes to the, you know, the drinks at like the pub or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I would just try to hang out with Indonesians. And like I said, it took like, they didn't really want to, mostly, right? Like I wanted to hang out with like the cool Jakartans, and like initially they didn't really have a lot of interest in that. It took them a while to be like, okay, this guy's actually all right. But
wait, so do the local like Indonesians, do they have awareness about the expat community? Is there like a real like us versus them feeling?
So it's like Bali's way different than Jakarta, right? So Bali, there's like a real line between the Balinese and the like white Westerners.
Yeah.
In Jakarta, white Westerners tend to really group together, but like there's not a hostility because there's not that many of them, and there's definitely like a community of like Jakartan locals that are friends with foreigners that have been educated, you know, that are just like have, everyone lives on the internet, so their tastes are very
yeah. No, I know.
In Bali, it's different because like people that come to Bali tend to be there to use their money for a very short period of time, to have a very good time and get out. So like the extent that like, so the people that foreigners hang out with in Bali often tend to be other Indonesians not from Bali. I mean, I have like a couple of Bali friends, but Balinese, like there is kind of a wall there between.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair dues. All right. I'll read the rest of the thread. See if we can. Unpack some next shit. When I think about it, it's super clear that the move was intuitive. Bali's was where I was supposed to be up through it all. There was energy about about the states that I had to take a break from. Bali was the perfect medicine. Is there a lot of kind of new age people that kind of go to Bali?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is an old thing. This is not even like Instagram, like the age of Instagram. This is like going back to like first wave hippie stuff. But again, another reason that I wrote my book in Bali, one, I was going to track down the mass graves that are still underneath all the tourist hotels and interviewing people whose relatives were killed. but also there's like nothing in Bali that I would want to do. Like I knew that if I was in Jakarta, someone would invite me to a party or like some kind of a art opening or a show or something, and I would be tempted to go to it. I knew that in Bali, I would just like, okay, I'll just literally isolate myself. But yeah, like on Ubud, there's like an old, it's been a long, like, yoga, but like the first, not like the old yoga, the first wave yoga. And then like on the coast and thing, there's a lot of like Instagram people, like Russian models or like Australians kind of use it as like a week vacation spot. So there's like really bad clubs that have like Australians.
Drunk. I can't think of anything worse than a fucking bunch of drunk Australians.
It's
they're the worst cunts in the world. Them and fucking South Africans have a little evil connection.
Yeah, I'm probably sure. Yeah, like I wouldn't love it if it was all Americans either. But like, so Bali's a lot of this. It's like for someone like you or me, I think it's like very corny. But like objectively, if you want to like live like a good life, like it can be cheap and like people will smile. And like if you've been in Indonesia long enough, like you can tell like who's like smiling and who's kind of like
the service smiling.
Right. But and like I said, and then we get to the question that a lot of Americans tend to be ignorant about is not just how rich we are by right of birth, but why that's the case, right? And any halfway educated Indonesian will know that Bali was the site of the worst mass murder that took place in 1965 with the assistance of the United States government. Yeah. So in 1965, I mean, should I just like outline what that all out?
Please do. I'm in, I really don't really have much of a background knowledge of it.
Yeah. So what my book is about in general is the ways that the U.S. and its allies employed the intentional mass murder of people that it deemed to be a threat to its sort of global project of hegemony. But the biggest and most important was in Indonesia, 1965. Again, like this is a big, important country, a proud country. This is the fourth largest country in the world by population. In the first years after World War II, the president of Indonesia, someone named Sukarno, who's half Balinese according to him, was the leader of the Third World Movement, one of the founding leaders of this very intentional, optimistic, and forward-looking project for countries in the global South to take their place alongside the United States. So he was really into blending Marxism and Islam and nationalism and local religion. Right, and he was like, he was the founding father of the nation. He was the real person that gave voice to sort of Indonesianness as it took shape in the first decades after World War II. And the United States did not like him. They did not like that the Indonesian Communist Party was winning so many elections. They did not like that Sukarno was trying to reshape the world order with Egypt and India. And he brought together the countries of Asia and Africa in 1955 in Bandung. And if you just like watch that speech on YouTube, like his opening speech, it's crazy because it sounds like, it's very much like the discourse about like race and global equality that we have like finally gotten back to 70 years later. He's talking about a meeting of the quote unquote colored peoples of the world coming together for the first time without any white person overseeing them. He's talking about reshaping the global order. And this was like working. This was popular, right? The Third World Movement. Now when people say third world, it's usually derogatory. That's because of the race.
You're not even supposed to say third world anymore.
Well, in the English-speaking world, the term has been degraded by the racists that speak English, right? But initially it was an intentional project, the Third World Movement, right? So they try several ways to overthrow Sukarno. They try bribing right-wing Muslim parties, but the Communist Party still keeps winning. He's not a communist, but he's certainly left sympathetic, and he allows the communists to be part of the democracy. Right. They consider killing Sukarno. They ended up not going out through with that. They create a pornographic tape, which is supposed to show Sukarno having sex with a KGB agent. And so this was made in Los Angeles. It was Bing Crosby's production company that put this together.
What the fuck?
Yeah. They apparently hired a quote unquote Mexican looking actor. Put him in a mask and then try to create a tape that was going to discredit this guy
Right.
in the eyes of Indonesians. And again, this is like, he's the founding father of the country. They're trying to destroy the reputation of him. That's it. They end up not publishing it, I think, because it wasn't good enough. It like was pretty clear.
Shit, you got some random Mexican wearing a mask.
Yeah, it was shit. And then they start bombing the country. In 1958, the CIA drops bombs all over Indonesia in the attempt to break it up. Right? I mean, remember, this is the time when the U.S. had been helping France to reinvade Vietnam. The left, especially in Indonesia, was very scared of the U.S. And then finally, in 1965, this is the third attempt. It's kind of mysterious how this clash comes about between the very popular and unarmed Communist Party. And I should make clear that they didn't have any weapons, and they would have won elections had they been allowed to continue. The CIA even admits that the Communist Party was the most popular.
Yeah.
The CIA and MI6 intentionally work behind the scenes to create a clash between the Communist Party and the military, knowing that if anything that can be used as a pretext for this clash, the military can crush the left. And that's what happens in 1965. The military takes over, effectively sidelining Sukarno, and proceeds to arrest 1 million, 2 million, maybe more people. I met a lot of these people that survived it, and they all say that they weren't expecting this to happen, right? They didn't think they did anything wrong. They didn't think being in the Communist Party was a crime. They just got kind of picked up at their house, and they're like, okay, I'll go in. But what happens is they kill about 1 million of these people, usually taking them out at night and stabbing them, throwing them into rivers or whatever. And another 1 million stay in concentration camps for about a decade. Now, Bali was the worst site of the violence. On the island of Bali, we don't have good estimates because nobody ever really looked into this, because
Of course.
the dictatorship became an ally of the United States. On the island of Bali, we reckon that at least 5% of the population was killed in 1965.
Fucking hell, 5% of the population. So
Right.
what is that in raw numbers?
So it's probably like 50 to 100,000 people.
Fucking hell, mate.
And again, I talked to, that's what I was doing in Bali as I was writing the book, was to track down the people that lived near the sites where the military had just dumped all the bodies on the beach. And they still find bones to this day. So like in like the most touristy areas of Bali, the locals will still find bones and things, and they'll call, it's almost entirely a Hindu island. So they'll call the local village leader priest to perform some kind of a funeral rite on the remains. And this is like till now, right? Like they still are finding this. And the point that I make in my book, which is, I think, difficult but relevant to this thread, is that those two things are related, right? The thing that I talked about at the beginning of this, the huge gap in wealth between the United States and Indonesia, and this mass murder. So the tourist industry took off just after the Suharto dictatorship consolidated his power. So when the US-backed dictator took over as a result of the mass murder and consolidated his dictatorship, he became one of Washington's most important allies in the world. And it was exactly at this point where they started building the nice tourist hotels in Bali. So I don't think I would argue, or that most Balinese would argue, that it's like bad to go there, or that being born American means you're like guilty.
No, but it's slightly ironic, isn't it? Like fucking, it's slightly ironic, isn't it? You're just there on the beach, fucking playing volleyball. Oh, mate. Oh, what's that in the fucking ground? Oh, it's some fucking cunt's femur bone.
Yeah, and so
sorry, go on.
No, yeah, like I don't think anyone would argue that's like I like did it myself, or it's bad for me to go to Bali for any reason. But if you just kind of go there and then brag about the fact that you're from a rich country and this is a poor country and therefore you get to live like a king or queen or whatever, that set off a lot of bells on Indonesian Twitter. I think that's really what this comes down to.
Yeah, and I think like being proud of not paying taxes it's not a thing. And one thing that's really weird is like people with radical leftist in their bio, fucking like backing these people doing this kind of shit. Like, what the fuck is that all about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a similar thing. Like, in the same way that U.S. citizens tend to be ignorant of our how, like, I mean, I'm very American. Like, I'm not like, whatever. I don't pretend that I'm not. But like, we grow up with an ideology that kind of affirms that we're the only country. Like, you kind of grow up thinking this is the only place.
Yeah.
So not only do you not know that how rich you are, you just think every country is like the United States is the world, and you think that it's normal to be American, where it's really not normal to be American, right? Like, you live in the hegemon, you live in a country which is one of the most militaristic societies of all time and one of the richest societies of all time, and those things are linked. And and a lot of effort goes into making sure that we learn certain things about our history and not others. And so I could see why this thread is interesting, because I bet that these women just kind of didn't know.
No.
They never thought about it that way.
I mean, until I heard about your book, I didn't even, because I think the active killing, the documentary, they didn't really go into the backing of America in that documentary at all.
It's on the opening screen, but yeah, he made a decision to just zoom in on the violence itself.
Well, do you know what? It's been a while since I've seen that film. Know what I mean? I forgot all about that.
I only watched it once, to be honest. I mean, I was supposed to watch it again for but research. I couldn't. It was a bit much.
I think if you've actually fucking hung around cunts that were, garroted for voting left and that, like, it's a bit different to watching a film. For me, even just watching it was like, oh mate, some of this is hard to stomach.
Yeah.
I mean, to what level and what material resources did America actually give to the paramilitary?
So, as I said, there was a 10-year attempt with various tactics to take down the Indonesian left. And after the one in 1958 failed, the one where they just dropped bombs on innocent people trying to keep a civil war going to break the country apart, they kind of switched and they said, okay, instead of fighting with the Indonesian military, we're going to be allies with them. So they brought thousands of them to the United States for training in Kansas. And the people that really oversaw the genocide or the mass murder, it's some people like to call it genocide, some people don't. Were trained in the United States in Kansas. I don't think that they got a plan back then in 1959 or 60 to say this is what you're going to do. But I do think that when there was a power vacuum and General Suharto grabbed it, the military had a plan to crush the left. And they did it in this way because they believed that the United States wanted them to and knew that the United States would be happy they did it. And when they started doing it that way, the United States government, and I published these declassified documents in the book. Okay. The United States government got constant updates on exactly what was happening, and they gave them encouragement. And then at one point, the state's a member of the U.S. Embassy staff handed over a list of people.
Yeah.
To be make sure you get these guys too.
Holy shit.
And this guy admitted it to the Washington Post 2 decades later. And he was like, yeah, I probably have a lot of blood on my hands, but there's, it was, so.
Oh, mate. That's
mad. And this is precisely why we don't know. I mean, I became friends with a group of people in Bali that run a sort of an organization. They have a coffee shop, on the other side of the island where white people would never go. Just political discussions and things. They're all related to people that were killed in the violence, right? And they say, look, a lot of people that come here think they're very switched on about history and human rights and whatever. They may know everything about Cambodia or genocide in Africa. None of them know about this at all. And I think that's precisely because the people that won were so close to the United States, and it hasn't been in anyone's interest to publish this for a long time. And and not even they he does tours for kind of woke Westerners And then along the tour, they're like, by the way, this happened too. And they're like, what? And, and even, and he understands. I mean, like, even with me, like, we all understand the material gap between us, right? Like a lot of the survivor groups that I worked with in Indonesia, like they like really wanted to do the book. They really wanted to talk to me. They really wanted the story told. We never discussed anything like this. But after the book came out, they turned around and they were like, hey man, like, we know that you can, like, we can't pay rent. Like, could you help or like ask? And like, it's obvious to both sides. Like, yes, I can. Like, I put it up online and I raised, an amount which is very small. But they needed it. And like, even, there's no, like I'm saying, like, there's no way to get around the material reality of this country being much less rich than the United States. Like, and I didn't feel there was ever any way I could truly live there without, and like navigate it morally, right? Like, I felt like the only moral way to live in Indonesia was to write a book about US crimes in the country and then get out. Right. But a lot of people live there and that's fine. And like, but like, it seemed what really set people off is to declare, I live here because
it's cheap.
And like, it also tells you so much about the global economy, right? Because like, so much, if you live in the global South country, Pete, you're told all the time by the IMF and everybody else, like, oh, you need to like upgrade into the advanced industrial economy. And like, when you can see these people, like, what are they doing? They're just like making brands for fake like stores on eBay and then like moving money around and then like having sex with each other or with like sex workers on the island. Like, is that the like advanced industrial economy really? Like, no, this is like obvious exploitation. It's in your face. You grew up with it. And like I put in the book at the very end, like if an alien came to Earth and walked around Bali, they would come to the conclusion very quickly that that planet Earth was organized according to a racial hierarchy, that somehow or another the white people were in charge, non-white people had to work for them. That would become clear in about 15 minutes. If you walk the streets of Bali, that's just a visitor from another planet would come to that conclusion, I think, correctly. So like, there's a lot to like I said, there's a lot of like weird, like ideological strands that like overlap that are hard to like get to unless you have like this big like wide lens look at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole thing, it's fucking mad. And I know the whole digital nomad thing, I've always been like very slightly disgusted by it, just because, you're basically taking advantage of the fact that like most people in the world don't have access to the internet. Most people in the world don't actually have access to technology, like basic like fucking smartphones and shit. Most people can't speak English, and you're just taking advantage of those things.
Yeah, it's just arbitrage, right? Like it's just you are getting paid in dollars in a wage that was negotiated based on the assumption you'd be living in a first world country, and then you don't, right? It's that simple. You're just doubling down. Like you already have enormous privilege, or whatever. You already have enormous economic advantages by being born in the country you're born in. Now you're like really leaning into it and like finding ways to multiply and to play tricks with it. And I mean, it's not good. I mean, like I said, I didn't hang out in Bali. I didn't hang out with anybody except for the like people, the Balinese, like the people that were trying to get the story about their relatives and things. Like it's not. It's You weren't there on a yoga retreat, basically. No, I didn't do yoga. I didn't do yoga. I know. Then again, like but again, like this is another thing that's like makes it all much more like difficult, but also interesting. Is that you're not taking advantage of that if you don't go there. Like if you're just from Paris and you live in Paris, you still exist in that same global system. It just manifests itself in different ways, right? And there's no way to do anything as somebody from the global north that is not implicated in that global system. So like, it's not like existing is a sin if you're from that place, but like some awareness is like usually the least you could do.
A little bit of when self-awareness goes a long fucking way. And yet again, I bring it back to a bit of a cheap American bashing where you lads don't have a lot of it. Actually, I do kind of want to jump over slightly and talk about your time in Brazil, because Brazil's always been a country that's kind of fascinated me since I was very young. When I was a young boy in Mongolia, I had a Brazil shirt, so I've always wanted to be Brazilian. I've always had a slight fascination with the place. Right now, Bolsonaro, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it's not a good. I mean, it's not good. It's not a good time for the country, right? Like when I got there, it was like, it seems weird to think of now, but I was at the Financial Times in London. Like I knew you at that time. That's when I met you, I think, around that time.
Yeah.
And in 2010, and they sent me to Brazil to cover like this economic boom, which was exploding under Lula. You know, and then Dilma Rousseff was going to take over. And yeah, in 2018. You know, I'm working on something about this now, but like by 2018, the Workers' Party had been kind of destroyed. That was like the left-leaning, center-left party that Lula sort of helped found and led, had sort of been torn apart by scandal and political attacks from their enemies. And the guy that was left was this like extreme right, like former military captain who was kicked out of the military after he allegedly planted bombs in his own, you know, he was planting bombs around Rio to try to get wages raised, like false flag stuff, stuff big in the Brazilian military dictatorship. Whenever it seemed like they were losing power, they would just throw some bombs here or there and blame it on the left, and then that was more excuse to get more power.
Fucking up.
And yeah, he came back in 2018. I was there, and he got elected like with the promise of we're going to bring back the ideology of the dictatorship, and we're going to kill the left, and we're going to, you know, we're going to wipe the country clean. And like fascist or not, like he's definitely as far right as most fascists, right? And and like with the coronavirus thing, it's been a mess. But he's like his popularity is staying.
Where's his popularity come from? Is it because most like I don't know the demographics of Brazil, but like what's the percentage of like white people?
Like 45.
45.
Yeah.
Huh. And then everyone else is like 55. Then not 55, as in like broken down into little parts. Then
yeah, they have like again, like you say, like Americans like to like really impose their racial categories on the rest of the world. That doesn't work in Brazil. Like the categories are different, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you add them all up, it's just over 50%, and it's usually some mix of European, African descent, and indigenous, right? But there's a lot of Asians, and there's a lot of those are the four main groups: Asian immigrants, European immigrants, descendants of African enslaved people, and then the white colonizers. So what I would say is that like Bolsonaro's support is about half like outright fascist,
right?
Like the people that have always been there in Brazil, the people that believe that the poor need to be violently kept in place, which is like what the country's founded on, just like the United States, right? It's very similar to the United States in its history.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if you think about it, like it is a Western European settler colony with the white people at the top.
Yeah, no.
They had, you know, exterminated or marginalized the indigenous population, imported a lot of enslaved people from Africa, and then later they allowed immigrants from Western Europe or Asia to sort of slide into that. It's the same hierarchy. It's just the numbers are different. It's the same thing, you know.
Right. Okay.
And that became really clear to me when I moved to Indonesia, because like, you know, these countries are so different. But if you look back at the whole Western Hemisphere, it's all the same thing. It's Western European settler colonies.
Yeah.
Excluded or murdered indigenous peoples, and then
I mean, I feel like that's basically the story of South America, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's every country. I mean, again, the proportions are different. In countries like Bolivia, you might have a much higher proportion of indigenous people to the point that they've been able to take political power a little bit. But they're all, you know, every country in the Western Hemisphere speaks a Western, you know, all of this giant strip of land from Canada down to Argentina speaks to one of two or three languages which come from this tiny little corner of Western Europe that was powerful.
Yeah.
You know, 1600.
When you put it like that, fucking hell.
And they're all, you know, they're all Christian. Like in the book, like, which by the way, like it is something that like a normal person could pick up if they're interested. Like it's written, it's like short and it's not.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay.
No. I am gonna.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. But
I will eventually get around to
one of the Brazilian women that I met. She's Indonesian. Her family fled because of U.S. backed racism against Indonesians of Chinese descent. And when she got to Brazil, she kind of described. She's like, "Oh, I see. Like, oh, Brazil. Like, okay, the white people are still here. Like, they didn't go. They didn't leave. They didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, they had to take the white people's religion. They don't have. They're all Christian.
Yeah.
The indigenous religions are destroyed. The indigenous languages are destroyed. Okay, I get it. That's the deal. I have to participate in a white dominated society. I can adapt, right?
Right.
And so half of Bolsonaro's people are the like out and out like democracy's bad. Let's murder the rebels. Let's put down the slave revolt. And then another half is sort of people that after so much political crisis and confusion in the 2010s, just were like, yeah, we'll try something else. Because like Lula was not allowed to run again. He was like removed from the election by where'd you go? Are you gone?
Yeah, I'm here. I just I'm back. Wait, hold up. Yeah, hold up. Yeah, so
there you go. We can get. No, yeah. So I would say half of his voters are like out and out, anti-democratic, violent, right wing.
Yeah, let's
try something different. And in 2020, he got lucky, or he was sort of given credit for a cash assistance program that really helped out a lot of poor Brazilians. Yeah. He didn't do it, but he was the president when
it happened,
when everybody else got together and made it happen. So that's what's been maintaining his support so far.
Holy I mean, but here's the thing. I just never knew there was that many white people in Brazil. I'm not going to lie, because what I know of Brazil isn't through their media or anything like that. It's from basically their footballers, their sportsmen, basically. Yeah. They're footballers, they're MMA stars, they're Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists or whatever. And they all tend to be, cunts that look like Morph, not me. Like, you won't know who Morph is, but all my British listeners, you know who Morph is. Morph is like a cartoon character who's like a light brown man.
Okay.
For me, I just thought everyone was like mixed looking. I didn't know, like I didn't. I have to say, I genuinely didn't know that.
Again, it's self-identification, though, right? It's self-identification. Like
that is true, because one thing I did notice looking at a lot of Latinos for Trump types, so like a lot of these I know black pappy types are like. I think you're like, it's a bit weird. It's like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. This is like, so there's a movie that came out. It's called Bacurau, Bacurau. Okay. It's a Brazilian film that like has been done really well with foreign audiences. Like, I think this filmmaker is really good. It's called Kleber Mendonça Filho. Like, but yeah, Bacurau. If people want to check that out. But in that film, there's like a really interesting scene where like these two visions of race come up against each other, because some right wing white Brazilians are collaborating with some white Americans,
right?
And the right wing white Brazilians were like, oh no, like we're white, like we're from Europe, like we're from the part of Brazil that was conquered by Italians and Germans, like we're like you. And then the Americans are like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not white, you're Latino or whatever. And like that, it proves two things: race isn't real, but also like the systems don't map onto each other.
No.
Like if you walk down the street in Sao Paulo or whatever, you look at like the newsstand, fashion magazines, television, like journalists or whatever, it will be 100% white people. Like not 99, like 100% white people. Really? Yeah. And like anyone that sort of demands that be in sort of interrogated in any way is seen as a real rabble rouser, like, oh, like, politically correct, like we just picked the hottest people or whatever. Gisele's German Brazilian, right?
Okay, to be honest, I vaguely know who Giselle is.
She's a model. Her last name's Boonkin with like a umlaut in it. But all the models in Brazil are like German, or from the part of Brazil, not all, but traditionally they've drawn the models from the southern parts of Brazil where people are like German and Italian.
Wow. Learning every day, people. Learning every day. If people want to jump on with some questions for Vincent, shout out to SNC Xmas. If anyone wants to jump on and ask any questions of Vincent, now is the time to do it. But I don't think anyone's in the chat at the moment. unfortunately.
Yeah, whatever, that's fine. Did you even know? You just turned it on, huh? Or we like you texted me? You're like,
what? Oh yeah, no, this is all like it's all like I mean it's all a bit last minute.com.
no, it's good. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, but how did you see this thread or whatever, the Bali? Where did that come to you?
It was so fucking weird because the way it came to me is like loads of people on my timeline doing like love heart eyes at like quote tweeting it and being like, oh my god, this is like the dream. And then
it was the exact opposite for me.
Oh yeah, no. So yeah, exactly. So that's how I got through it. But like yeah, so I kind of looked at the tweets and I was like lads, is this really something to be heart eyes in? Like reading it and then reading more tweets, and I was like, by the end of the thread, I was just exasperated, and I don't know, it just felt like it just felt like fucking hell, like a lot of people. I don't know. It just felt like Twitter's starting to eat itself, and like all this rhetoric that people don't particularly understand, but they kind of spew out. Like they don't really understand the thing behind it. They just kind of understand the words, and I don't know. It just for me, it was just like.
Well, it got to the point where some of my like mutual or like I guess friend, I don't know, like blocked their accounts because these are like leftist Indonesian girls with like small followings, and then they were like embedded in the independent in things as like taking down Western privilege or whatever. And they're like, oh, it's too much, and like national sort of analysis as to whether or not we were racially motivated and like blah, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like.
But what is in Indonesia? What's their view on the race thing then? Is it like. Yeah.
It's like a different, you know, the lines don't map up.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
Balinese and Javanese. So people in Jakarta are different ethnicity than people in Bali. They speak a different language, like at home, or like, you know, their grandparents would have spoken a different language. Now everyone speaks Indonesian. Like, one very big issue that deserves more attention is the plight of the West Papuan people.
Yes, yeah. I've been following that Twitter account. It's mad.
And West Papua basically was, you know, Indonesia is the former Dutch colonies in Southeast Asia or in Asia, right? That's all it is. That's the thing that held it all together. It was really Sukarno that gave that, like.
So before Sukarno, there wasn't an Indonesian or national identity as such then?
No, it was Dutch East Indies.
Really? Wow.
The Dutch came back after World War II and tried to reconquer it. Just like, you know, like it was that era of like not realizing it was over. You know, the Dutch came back from 1945 to 49 to try to reconquer. And the Dutch, by the way, do not acknowledge like what this was. Yeah. It's still called the police action, as if it was like they had a right to be policing an independent country in after World War II was over. So the Japanese conquered a lot of Southeast Asia, right? You know, that's like famously. Yeah, Philippines is better known, but Indonesia also. And then when the Japanese got kicked out, it was Sukarno who declared independence, and the Dutch came back to try to take it away. So he was the first leader, and yeah, and like I said, he gave voice to like what it was to like bring together Indonesianness as a thing, and a lot of it was like the unity of anti-imperial struggle. Like to be Indonesian was to be an anti-imperialist, and to somehow, you know, this mix of sort of social justice, like Marxism light, with the various religions in the islands, right? So like religious identity is very important. So like in Bali, everyone's Hindu, but in Java, most people are Muslim, but some people are Buddhist or Christian or Catholic. But yeah, the plight of the West Papuans is definitely racialized. So they have darker skin. They look like what you might think of if you think of like the indigenous people of Australia. Like, you know, they're not the same, but that would be the way that they're like racialized. Yeah. And so like some Indonesians that are very connected to the internet, like use Black Lives Matter to try to get some attention for that, like to try to import this.
Right. Okay. Because I like the way I'm guessing is Indonesians Do they know about West Papua as a struggle?
Some people, it's not. I mean, so it's illegal for you. It's illegal for me or you to go there. So
Wow.
as a journalist, I had a journalist visa.
Yeah.
So again, it's illegal. So the book that I wrote is illegal. Like, it's illegal to say or do anything which is can be construed as sympathetic to communism. And even though my book is like a Washington Post reporter just talking about the history, it could be easily construed as illegal. But when I was on my journalist visa in Indonesia, that there was a stipulation that journalists could not go to West Papua, and if you did, you could easily be arrested or kicked out of the country.
Fuck.
And like they made up, you know, they didn't say this, but clearly that was because they didn't want anyone to publicize what's happening there. And so, like, yeah, like, you know, politically informed, smart young Indonesians, and there's a lot of them, know about West Papua. They make a lot of noise, but like a lot of regular people
Just don't know or give a fuck.
much. They know that it is part of Indonesia, but they don't know much about
Really?
which the Indonesian military is responsible for horrible things.
That's fucking wild, mate. That's fucking wild. I guess it's as good as time as any to start wrapping it up.
Yeah, we got lots of comments in the chat, but none are actually, you know, no, they're all just hello.
Yeah, we had a couple guys. Thanks for it. Shout out to one Domo. Shouts to you.
Yeah, thank
Shout
you.
to SNC again. And,
Branded Island.
Yeah, Branded Island. Shout out to Branded Island.
I'm very happy that they finally branded Island.
Yeah, it's about about fucking time, mate. But yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And like, you know, people, you know,
and explaining shit to me. I'm sure we'll do something like this again with you explaining stuff to me. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I'm gonna go. What was the Brazilian film? How'd you spell that?
Baku. So BACU. Bakurau. And then like the book is the Jakarta Method. Again, not that hard to like get through. But all that guy's Brazilian films are really good. His name's Kleber Mendonça Filho. Like if you Google Bakurau, like Bakurau's on all the streaming services now, so you can like it's actually easy to watch.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. So if you got Amazon Prime, you can bang that.
Yeah, that's good. And like and like, you know, I'll go back. I know I'll go back to Brazil pretty soon because like things are. It may not be resolved easily. This whole Bolsonaro thing.
Yeah. How do you see it playing out?
Well, he like loves people to think that he's like a mini Trump. He really loves to associate himself with Trump. And I think that's to launder his reputation, because if he can associate himself with America, that gives him some legitimacy. But he's a lot more extreme. But one of the ways in which he was like kind of aping Trump's like shtick was to claim 2 years in advance that the Brazilian election would also be stolen. And Brazil is the kind of a country where like if the president tries to do a coup on himself, you know, it really might work. And you know, it didn't work in the United States. But like people are already worried that like even if he loses his popularity, he's not going to want to let go of power. He thinks the left is like doesn't deserve to. So yeah, I mean, like it's not a great time for my friends that were like very excited about where their country was going when I first moved there in 2010.
Shout out to 2011 when everyone was hype about the BRIC squad, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where you lot now, eh? Hey.
China's still doing fine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's the one.
They're the only one holding it down for the BRIC squad.
That's the one. That's the one.
But yeah, thanks for this.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll be seeing you guys soon. Take care. Boy.